Welcome to the Action Network podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Brendan Glasheen. Today's episode, Super Bowl 57 Best Bets, our last Best Bets episode of the season. Everyone take a second. There you go. Joining us, the usual crew, Brandon Anderson, Joe Gallant, Luke Swain, a.k.a. Vegas Refund. A lot to get to on the show. Of course, the best bets, some Super Bowl info, some trends to keep in mind. Now, before we jump into the picks, some info for you folks at home. Of course, we have 56 Super Bowls in the books. 47-7-2 is the spread record for Super Bowl winners. So 47 of the 56 winners have covered the spread or won outright as an underdog. Favorites 36-20 straight up, 27-2 against the spread in the big game. Overs slightly under 500, 26-8-1. And underdogs are 8-7 straight up in the last 15 Super Bowls, including 10-5 against the spread. Okay, let's go to Brandon Anderson first, as we normally do. First best bet for Super Bowl 57.
I'm going with the Eagles, and let me tell you how I'm doing it. I'm going to take the Eagles halftime and Eagles full-time at plus 160. So let me make the case for the Eagles first. I think this game is going to be won in the trenches, and that is how Philadelphia's won games all season long. I think it's how they do it here. On the defensive line, you got Hassan Reddick, Jason Sweat, Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave, all 11 sacks or more in the regular season. I think they can give Kansas City's offensive line some trouble. Number one pressure rate, number one sack rate, 11.5% on pass plays. That's not just number one this season. That's number one this entire century. And it's further ahead of second place than second is from 29th. They've lapped the entire NFL in pressure rate this season. Kansas City interior line, pretty good. Those tackles are a little shaky at times, and they haven't been tested that much this season, only 2 games against a top 8 pressure team. So I think the Eagles can get after Mahomes. We know Mahomes still has that ankle thing that's going to probably crop up as the game goes on more and more. Then on the other side, Eagles offensive line, the best offensive line in the league, deepest line in the league, and it's all about the run game on that side. Eagles number one rushing DVOA, number one by EPA, top of the league in explosive runs. Chiefs run defense is suspect. They're only 21st in rushing DVOA defense, dead last in ESPN's run stop win rate. And there's been a lot of talk this week, fairly so, about, well, the Eagles aren't very tested. They haven't really been pushed by anyone. Well, the Chiefs haven't necessarily faced that many more tests either. They've only faced 2 teams with a positive rushing DVOA. They lost both of those games, ranked 30th defense on both of those. And they only faced 4 top 13 offenses. So I think the Eagles win in the trenches. They're the better team overall, team versus individual. So that's the case for the Eagles. Now, why halftime full-time? So 16 games this season, the Eagles have won, counting the postseason. Philadelphia's led at halftime in 14 of those 16 games. That is how the Eagles win in this game. If you want the script, you want them to pass early, get the lead, and then run the ball. Run. Those 12-play, 78-yard, 8-minute drives. That's the script against Patrick Mahomes. Keep Pat on the sideline. We don't want to come back. We don't want Jalen Hurts having to come back against Mahomes. If you like the Eagles, it has to be, I think, because you like them early. So halftime, full-time, we get a plus 160. That's a 38% implied. Money line, we're only at 55%. So basically, as long as the Eagles lead at halftime when they win, then that's a better bet for us if they do that at least 70% of the time. And they've done that 88% of their wins this year. So I like the Eagles. I'm going to juice the odds a little bit by adding in that halftime. Give me Philly halftime, full-time, plus 160.
Teams who score first in the Super Bowl, 37-19 straight up. So that is something that, of course, we need the full 30 minutes, but getting off to a good start, scoring first, whatever that may be, is crucial to this particular play by Brandon. Let's move on to Luke. Your first best bet, Super Bowl 57, Kansas City and Philadelphia. What do you got?
So I'm going to go with Dallas Goedert over 49.5 receiving yards, which this is going to be one where it's going to be somewhat similar to like a lot of the angles over the playoffs have been attacking the Chiefs over the middle of the field, which the Chiefs are the third worst in DVOA. against the short pass, the middle of the field, where this is definitely a spot where the Chiefs really eliminate the explosive play. And when Hurts is going to be passing, it's going to be the short intermediate passes to Goedert, where in games that the Eagles have faced bottom 5 DVOA teams in terms of against the pass, Goedert went from 57, 72, 46, and 78. So he has been eating the matchup advantages that they've had. And 9 out of 14 games he's gone over this number. And these are going to be the sharpest numbers that we have. So like, I think I've said on all of the pods, we have 20 plus games of results to create these numbers based off of. So in terms of finding like an elite edge there, if you're not looking at the special props, which good luck with that, like these numbers are going to be sharp. And at 49.5, this is going to be one of the very few player props that I will have a wager on. And it just feels like too good of a number in the matchup. So Goedert over 49.5.
You mentioned 9, just looking at the game logs too, some of these controlled environment games, dome games or warm weather games, Detroit week 1, 60 yards, at Arizona, 8 receptions, 9 targets, 95 yards. The game in Dallas, 3 for 67. So in those particular spots, he has shined, and it's easier to throw the football in a controlled environment. That's for sure. Okay, Joe Gallant, you can find him on the Touchdown Show every week. He's been hot these playoffs. I don't want to, put pressure on you there, Jill. But
hell yeah.
You're rolling, my man. Let's, what do you got? I'm assuming you're going to that market to start us off. What do you got?
Yeah, pressure creates diamonds. And I think we're going to be looking at Dallas Goedert for a touchdown for a lot of the same reasons that Luke mentioned, but I'm going to double down and just go a little bit deeper into that, specifically because of Jalen Hurts' passing preference. Like, he has looked for Goedert early and often, pretty much since the start of when he became a starter at the start of last season. So if you just look over the last 2 seasons, 83 first down catches by Dallas Goedert. To put that in perspective, that's more than the first 3 seasons combined that he had for 76 first downs. And had he played a full slate, he only played 12 games this year, he actually would have surpassed A.J. Brown and Davonte Smith for total first downs. And as Luke mentioned, attacking the slot is the key of what we target when we bet against the Chiefs defense. We got Christian Kirk when they played against the Jags. Tyler Boyd looked great until he got hurt midway through that game. And Goedert lines up exclusively in the slot. Chiefs have given up the second most touchdowns to the slot this season. Also, since coming off their bye in week 10, the Chiefs have given up at least 1 touchdown to the slot in all but 2 games. And the 2 games that they didn't give up one was week 13 against the Bengals and the AFC Championship game also against the Bengals. So just something to consider here from a matchup standpoint. And for what it's worth, when they played the Chiefs last year in week 4 at the Link, he caught a touchdown on them then as well. So Dallas Goedert at plus 175 is my best bet for the Super Bowl.
All right. Love it. We'll see if he's got another touchdown scorer on the board later on. Let's go back to Brandon, and no surprise, you are remaining on those Eagles, but in a different way.
I am. I'm going to go back to one that we've talked about on past Best Bets episode. I'm going to go with Davonte Smith, Super Bowl MVP. We've talked about that one heading into the Giants game. We like that one at plus 7,500. Into the Niners game, we gave that out again at plus 5,000. We're still getting a plus 3,100. I still like it here. So let me tackle this in 2 parts. First of all, you need to know why the worst bet that you can make in the Super Bowl is Jalen Hurts to win MVP. Now, this, of course, is a quarterback award usually. Only 11 of the last 16 Super Bowl MVPs have been quarterbacks. If you like the Chiefs, and I don't blame you if you do, it's got to be because of Pat Mahomes. You should just bet Mahomes to win MVP. I think with the narrative baked in, which it always will be on MVP, you're probably getting Mahomes win MVP, maybe 90% of Chiefs wins. I don't think that's the case with Jalen Hurts. If you look at what does a Hurts game look like, maybe 190, 200 passing yards and a score, 10 carries, 40 rushing yards and a score. That doesn't scream MVP to me. That doesn't overwhelm me. He's not really a big flash guy. Only 275 passing yards so far in the playoffs. Well, yeah, that's because they've been so far ahead. They don't need to pass. That's the point. The script, if you want, I hate to keep going with script, the way that we've been seeing that word this week. The formula, let's go there. The formula of an Eagles win is not Jalen Hurts having a huge passing game and having big stats. I think the more stats Hurts has, the less likely the Eagles are to win. So if you look at the numbers, Hurts is around plus 125, 130 to win MVP. If you do the math, he is to win MVP about 78% of all Eagles wins by the money line to make that bet worth it. And I think that is a ludicrous number. I think Hurts wins MVP in under half of Eagles wins. You can bet Field versus Hurts MVP minus 170. That's probably the right play here, if I'm being honest. But you know me, why play a minus 170 when I can play a plus 3,100 instead? So Davonte Smith, we've talked about him a lot. I lost money on Davonte Smith last game. Luke did the game before. The man has been robbing our money. He owes us money, and he's going to win it back with Super Bowl MVP. Chiefs are second to last DVOA against wide receiver ones. They are 26th against receivers on the right side of the field. That's where Davonte lines up mostly. A.J. Brown usually on the left. The Chiefs are 6th there. Davonte Smith, all but one of his touchdowns this year against man coverage. Chiefs are top 10 in man coverage. Didn't get much in that Niners game, though he did lead all receivers in yardage. But before that game, last 7 games, 6.5 catches per game, 93 yards, 5 touchdowns in those 7 games. 2 of the last 4 Super Bowl MVPs have been receivers. And if it's not Hurts, I think it could be more of a team, more of a balanced effort. Can we get another highlight grab, get a score, maybe 2? I think that Davonte Smith wins MVP maybe 8 or 9% of the time, plus 3,100. That's an implied 3%. We're getting half of A.J. Brown's price here, double the value for just as good of a player, maybe better right now. This is my favorite Super Bowl MVP pick. I got to do it. Davonte one more time, plus 3,100.
And his receiving yards prop, Luke, is going up too. It's up to 63.5. And as Evan Abrams laid this out in his segment, there's been movement since the opening line a week and a half ago. When you look across the board, his 60 plus number is now minus 125, which reflects the 63.5 plus money. You're not getting as much. My point is, you're not getting as much value with Davonte over 70 yards, over 80 yards, over 90. Those numbers are all taking a hit. And that supports Brandon's argument. What do you have, Luke, for a follow-up?
Yeah, it's just it's crazy that between Davonte and A.J. Brown, like they really have the same role. Like Brandon said, Davonte might be the wide receiver 1 of the team, and really just purely based off of, I guess you could say, the name brand of A.J. Brown. And he's an alpha. He's half of his odds. It's crazy. They should be equal at the very worst. Or it's wild.
Yeah, narrative driven. You go out and make a trade for a receiver as opposed to having the guy you want in the draft fall to you where you wanted him. It's a little different. Davonte is probably going to be on that same level from a fan standpoint as a league favorite standpoint in just a year or so, I would think. And if he wins the MVP, he definitely will be, for sure. Luke, what do you got for your second best bet?
So my second one, which I really wanted to have one where I went through like the Super Bowl prop menu and try to find a prop that we wouldn't be able to bet in any other game. And the one I came down to was individual Eagles players to score a touchdown at over 2.5, which is at minus 120 right now. Where I went through all of the box scores and I came up with out of all the games that Hurts played, which he played in 17 when you include the playoffs, 13 of 17, at least 3 players scored a touchdown, which is 76%. And when you factor in the options that they have to score a touchdown, where you have, if they're rushing it, they have Hurts or Sanders, who Sanders had 40% of the red zone carries, Hurts had 30. And then you have the 2 other running backs that usually come into play when the game gets out of hand, where let's just say each of them get 1, and then one of the receivers between AJ, Davonte, and Goedert get a touchdown. That's 3. And purely based off this podcast, we've already got 2 touchdowns locked in. So we just need 1 more of this plethora of talent that they have to score, where it almost feels too good to be true. Like one of those easy ones where at 2.5, it's like, oh my God, like this total set at 51. How can 3 touchdowns not be scored at the Eagles? But I'm just going to go with it. There's just too many options in a game with a total like this, where you have multiple rushing threats that can score a touchdown, multiple receiving threats that can score a touchdown. And Brandon even mentioned on Green Dot Daily how I think it was like 33% of the Super Bowl games, there's been a defensive touchdown. Who we even have that. So at over 2.5, if you go to FanDuel, you go to the scoring options, you scroll down, it's buried. Individual players on the Eagles to score a touchdown.
Man, I love this one. The only thing is I'm angry that I did not find this one first.
Yeah.
I must have spent hours in the last couple of weeks scrolling. Like, you know me, I am deep in those menus. The further down and the higher the plus number is, the more it grabs my attention. I had not seen this one yet. And man, I love this bet. So I think Hurts to get into the end zone on a run. Obviously, Hurts passing does not count toward this one, like with anytime touchdown. But I think you get a lot of options here. My question for you, Luke, is this. Obviously, we got to have at least 3 Eagles touchdowns on this one. So you haven't taken a side here. Do you like the Eagles or like the over? Because it seems like you're going to have to feel pretty good about either or both of those to like this bet.
Well, I don't think you need to. Like, honestly, I think whether the Eagles win or lose, this is still in play where if, like, at a total of 51, totals are truly not my thing, where they could be playing catch up where we have 3 receivers where Hurts is passing above expectation, where in all of the games that they've just blown their opponent out, this is still hit. We're like 76% of the game. So of all of those scenarios, I still like it. Unless it is a like 23-20 type game, then we get a little dicey. But it's hard for me to envision a low scoring game as well where this total is high. But so I do not have an answer to your question. I just like them all, I guess you could say.
If I'm a Chiefs batter, should I still tail your bet?
Yeah, I mean 3 touchdowns. Yeah, I would still tail my bet if you're a Chiefs better. We're like, I was looking at overall like 5.5 is the total players scoring a touchdown total, where like the over for the Chiefs is plus money. I think it's like plus 130, where like there's such a funnel where you like there's scenarios where Kelce scores 3 touchdowns himself, and you really just can't predict. They have so many options, assuming they're healthy, that there really isn't any predicting on if any of those guys are going to score, whether it's Valdez, Tony, etc. In the Eagles, like they're not a funnel, but they're like a funnel to their talent, where they just have so much talent that like all of them can score. And I think I do need clarification. Like DraftKings has players to score, but they don't say touchdown or not, and I don't know if that includes kickers, where it's set at 3.5. Like my assumption, if it's at 3.5, like it has to include kickers. But if it doesn't, for whatever reason, this is even more of a steal.
As far as total touchdowns, FanDuel has Eagles at 3 and Chiefs at 3. Chiefs over is at plus 112 and Eagles over at minus 106.
And even if you look at the anytime touchdown odds, Kelce is the only one at minus 20 that isn't plus money.
Yep.
And then and then for the rest, just looking at it, anyone under 200 is Eagles players outside of Pacheco.
And last thing I'll add, I think this pick supports Brandon's argument of why Jalen Hurts is not a good MVP pick, because this highlights with a minus 120 number that it's going to be multiple guys getting in the end zone, and he could have something to do with it. There's no doubt about it. But this could be a ground game where we do see Boston Scott. We do see Miles Sanders quite a bit, but that highlights it's going to be a mixed bag as it pertains to guys who score.
And if it's like a blowout, et cetera, where like the Eagles just pound the Chiefs, that is exactly when the Boston Scotts and the Gainwells have come in, which
Gainwell too. Thank you. Yep.
Okay,
you mentioned touchdown scores. Let's go back to the man himself, Joe Gallant. Second pick, please.
Yeah, so first touchdown is obviously a still pretty popular market. I think a lot of people are going to be betting on first touchdown for this game if they don't normally do, just because it's the Super Bowl and everybody likes to have some action. But I want to reduce some of the volatility on that. So I think it's actually smarter if we look at a first team touchdown score. And I think we should look at the first Chiefs touchdown score. And that's when you want to bet on Travis Kelce. You can get it at plus 310 right now. So when you go through the season of the Eagles defense, 6 of 18 games, they allowed a touchdown to a tight end as the first touchdown in the game. Now, I will say I bent the rules a little bit because Taysom Hill was technically one of them, but I mean, you ask Sean Kerner, he's listed as a tight end. So I'm including it as part of this trend. Now, if you go through the entire season and playoffs, Kelce has scored the first Chiefs touchdown in 8 of 19 games. Obviously, he led all tight ends with touchdown catches with 15. He's got at least one touchdown in 5 straight playoff games. He did have the Chiefs' first touchdown catch in both playoff games versus the Jags and the Bengals. And from an odds standpoint, I feel like we're getting a little bit of value here because generally during the season, his odds were around plus 250 to plus 240. In 15 of 17 games this season, they were plus 250 or lower. So if you're going to bet on Kelce to score a touchdown, I think it's much more sound to take a swing on him to score the first Chiefs touchdown than taking an anytime touchdown at minus 120. So Travis Kelce is going to score the first Chiefs touchdown.
And that is what he did against the Bengals last week.
Jags.
And the Jags. Jags was the first drive of the game. Well, first offensive drive for Kansas City. And the Bengals, when it took some time, there was some kicking early in that game.
And I'm not saying you can't get value on him at first touchdown at plus 750, plus 700. It's around that range. But my issue is just with this being the Super Bowl, it's just so volatile. I would just like to cut down some of that risk, especially if I'm going to be betting this kind of market. So I think that's the safer play. And the fact that you're still getting it at a little bit more projected value, I think that's the way to go.
And it's hard to sink your teeth or feel confident in what else they have at receiver. And because of what's the status of those players, Hardman's out, of course, and as Evan mapped out, totals for Tony going up, Juju number going up as far as yards. So it feels encouraging. And Andy Reid is on record this week that while not 100%, the quarterback's not 100%, guys that are active or on the active roster were participating in practice.
Well, okay, I was going to say, did you see the incentive for Juju that he has to play over 50% of snaps and the Chiefs win? He gets $1 million incentive. So you know that he's definitely going to be playing at least half the game.
That's right. That gets buried. We almost forget about those right after the regular season. Nope, there's a little bit more added to it when you're a playoff team. Okay, good to know. Last round of picks. Brandon, start us off. What do you got?
Well, I got to get down on the anytime touchdown fun. It's the Super Bowl. You got to go down the menu a little bit and have a little fun here. So I'm going to grab an anytime touchdown score, but I get half of the guys on the team I'm taking because rather than taking one player, give me Philadelphia defense plus 750 for anytime touchdown score. So here's the case. And this surprised me. We did an anytime touchdown draft at Action Network. So I did a little extra research on this more than I usually do. I normally just do whatever Jill says. I don't have any anytime touchdown picks. Here's what I found. If you think back through Super Bowls, if you remember how Super Bowls are ending, there's a lot of times that you think through that one team's ahead, the team trailing is pushing, and then there's that back-breaking pick six, that back-breaking fumble recovery into the end zone. Touchdowns by the defense happen a lot in the Super Bowl. So here are the numbers. 56 Super Bowls. We've had 21 defensive touchdowns. That is a 38% chance of a touchdown by the defense in the Super Bowl. At least one touchdown, almost one every 3 Super Bowls. And 21 touchdowns by the defense, 20 of them have been scored by the winning team, all but one of them. So whoever you like to win the Super Bowl, you need to bet that team to have an anytime touchdown by the defense. Both defenses are aggressive. Both teams are aggressive here. We talked earlier about that Philadelphia pressure. In the last 30 Super Bowls, if you just say, okay, well, what about more recently? How does that look? Last 30 Super Bowls, 15 touchdowns by the defenses. That is one every 2 Super Bowls. So if you look at the trend says, these are happening. I don't really know why, to be honest. Is it because we just have better defenses? It's the Super Bowl? Maybe. Is it the extra week to prepare? Maybe you keyed in on a tendency or jumped a route. That could be it. Is it just this is the end? Go for broke? I don't know what the reason is. I just know what the numbers say. At FanDuel, you can just play plus 300 for any defensive touchdown. If you want to stay away from picking which side, it's all right. You know me, I like to go for the big win. So give me Philadelphia plus 750. And if you go a little further down into the props there, for plus 3,000, 30-1, you can bet on any defender to score a touchdown and any defender to win MVP. Doesn't even have to be the same guy. That's happened in 4 of the last 22 Super Bowls. I promise you, those are correlated events. If the defense scores and the Eagles are kind of spread the wealth like we're talking about, defenders are in play for MVP there. 4 of the last 22 is 18%. 30 to 1 odds is more like 3%. So look, the numbers say we're probably going to lose the bet, but the numbers are heavily in our favor that this is how you got to bet. You got to have a little fun with Super Bowl. Manage your bankroll a little differently, and it's our last time for the year. So Philly defense, anytime touchdown, plus 750.
Yeah, it's a good read at actionnetwork.com. Super Bowl player props, Chiefs, Eagles, anytime touchdown draft. Jill actually picked after Brandon in the first round. He got Dallas Goedert after Brandon took Jalen Hurts second. Raybon got Kelce first. And then in the second round, they flipped, snake draft. Brandon went ahead and took the defense instead of A.J. Brown. So, yeah, it's something.
With that one where I'm a vicious YouTuber late night, and actually last night I was watching.
Where's this going?
The all-time greatest plays in the Super Bowl history by like NFL Throwback. And the amount of kick returns and defensive interceptions for touchdowns, it was just like play after play. Like that's not statistical. That just, I'm going to be betting this too, where quarterbacks in the Super Bowl have thrown interceptions 64% above their season average, where you have to assume like the play calling is more conservative, where they're going to try and pin them within their own red zone normally in the Super Bowl, where these interceptions are happening above expectation in the other team's territory. Like, yeah, I'm going to bet this when we get off. Like, this is about like, if you don't bet it and it happens and you don't have it, you just get pissed. Like, it's the fun.
Who wants to be mad in the last game of the year? Let's have some fun.
Okay, Luke. Clip. Maybe I'm going to start YouTubing stuff late night before I go make picks.
Have to get it all in before the draft. So my third one is going to be Patrick Mahomes over 292.5 yards passing, which this one on FanDuel, this number is a lot better relative to the market, where I think on a couple other books, it's at like 297 at this point.
Yeah.
But this is going to be one where Mahomes is number one in EPA per dropback going against an Eagles defense, where the common narrative that you've heard on every media landscape is the Eagles have not faced anyone, which is getting mush, but it is true. They only faced two top two quarterbacks in terms of EPA per dropback. We have the dome, we have warm weather. It's a team that has the greatest quarterback on the planet, who passes at an above average rate in a game that we don't know his health, that if it's worse than we're expecting, should be passing even more. I mean, I think the closest like comparison in terms of who the Chiefs have faced relative to the Eagles defense this year would probably be the Broncos. And he threw for 328 yards in that game. So I think the over Mahomes attempts was actually what I wanted first when I was digging through these earlier in the week. And that has just gotten out of range. I think it was at like 36 and now it's at 39.5. And
wow,
that's a pass for me, where like, I believe Mahomes is going to be passing above expectations in terms of attempts, which very well leads to over yards. So at 292 on FanDuel, that's a steal relative to the market. And it's really hard to argue with this one with Pat Mahomes.
352 in the other Denver game. 352 and 328 in both Denver games.
He threw it, I think, 49 and 42 times in his other two Super Bowls. So it's not like we have like two examples of Super Bowl play calling with Reed, where one, he was a little bit younger, that Reed wasn't conservative with Mahomes. Which the Bucs is a little bit different, where they were just getting mauled. But yeah.
And
yeah,
go ahead.
I looked at this one as well. I looked at an alternate over because, it's what I do. 325 passing yards in playoff games. Mahomes has done that 3 of the last 5 and 4 of the last 7 playoff games at 325. So you can get that. Obviously, I think that's closer to plus 200. But obviously, if you get 325, you're going way over the 292. So that's more credence to that in the playoffs.
Yep.
The Mahomes alternate passing are primo same game parlay legs that I've just been degenerating on. I'm trying to figure out one where, yeah. And I honestly at 297.5 on DraftKings right now is an alternate line on FanDuel for context.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to dabble on 325 plus at plus 188, 350 plus is plus 320.
I know, and it's like one extra play. It's one more pass down the field, especially if you like the Eagles, and now Mahomes trying to push and come back in the second half. That is an escalator just waiting to happen, grabbing a few of those.
Hell yeah.
I freaking love this game. I really do. Because you just go down so many fucking rabbit holes. It's awesome. We can swear on this podcast. I couldn't help myself. That's just so awesome. Like, here we are talking it out. By the way, there is a rushing yard total for Mahomes this week. We didn't have one much of the week in Cincinnati. It's at 19.5. So I don't know. You hear some of the arguments for why you should go over passing. Keep that in mind.
19.5. I think like the last couple of games, it's been at like that he hasn't been injured. Been like 15, 16.
Yeah.
Right. 19.5. Like, I don't know if that implies health, but like that is a lot higher than I thought it was going to be.
I mean, last game of the year kind of thing too. Leave it all out on the field. I mean, that's
Pour it all.
All right, Jill. We're again, rabbit holes. It's great. Jill, take us home. What do you got?
Yeah, so my last pick is going to probably correlate with what Brandon has just mentioned and also with what Luke has mentioned. And I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes to actually throw an interception at minus 120. And so 2 Super Bowls in his career. He's thrown 2 interceptions in both of those games. And really his turnover issues really started at the beginning of last season, in the 2021 season. And when those picked up, so he had 25 interceptions in 39 games, if you include the playoffs since the start of last year, and 21 interceptions in 39 of those games. So that's around 53% of the time. But in that same stretch, so if you think the Eagles are going to win, the Chiefs have lost 9 total games in that stretch since the start of last year. When they lose, he has thrown an interception in 7 of those games. So that's usually kind of the script of how the Chiefs lose, is there's a little bit of turnover issues. Now the Eagles, they were 3rd in total interceptions with 17 this year, 1st in sacks. I think the sacks is important because if you're going to get more pressure, that's going to make quicker decisions, likely increasing turnover probability. They also forced an interception in 12 of the 20 games that they played this season. So 58% if you include the playoffs. So I think if you believe that the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl, you may as well just bet on Mahomes' interception, because when the Chiefs lose, turnovers are typically involved. And also, if you're into the Illuminati numerology side of things, he has 56 career interceptions, and he's playing in Super Bowl 57.
There's something wrong with you. Did we just give out numerology?
100%.
That was a compliment for what it's worth. Walk.
That was in his defense. That was brought to his attention. So
yes, a Twitter follower DM'd me that. He's like, "Did you know?" And I was like, I responded with like 10 head explosion emojis of just like, what the hell? Like, who would even have thought to look that up? But yeah, that's the angle. That's the only angle you need to know.
I mean, we can talk halftime show too. Like, first song, last song, anthem, coin toss, heads.
All right, heads
All right.
only.
On that note, why don't you go YouTube some stuff in the meantime?
Well, I do want to say thank you, the 3 of you. Like, this was the first time I've done a podcast in the media. And at first I was I was nervous. I just wanted to thank 3 of you because you made this very easy. You gave me great feedback, and contractually loyal to the 3 of you for next year.
Wow. That was really nice of you. Thanks, Luke.
Yeah, no problem.
I expressed the same to you and to the rest of you. It was a fun year.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Close proximity.
Now, if none of these picks hit, I'm not your friends anymore. So how's that going?
Well, Brandon, are you gonna throw
money
down a bet? Brandon, you're supposed to throw down a bet.
We got to wrap it up because we got the boss on here, Matt Mitchell behind the scenes. We got to wrap up the show, and I got to tell you what else is coming up. But first, we got to recap the picks, and then we'll get out of here, and then we'll do that for the recap Monday. We'll talk about something for next year, maybe. We'll do that. So Brandon Anderson for Super Bowl 57 is on Philadelphia halftime, full time plus 160. He has Davonte Smith as his MVP at plus 3,100. Philadelphia defense anytime touchdown at plus 750. Luke is on Dallas Goedert over 49.5 receiving yards. You can get that at minus 110 at FanDuel. Individual Eagles to score a touchdown. So 3 Eagle touchdowns by 3 different Eagles. Over 2.5 at minus 120. And he's on the Patrick Mahomes passing yards over. And Joe Gallant likes Goddard touchdown at plus 175. Kelce first Kansas City touchdown at plus 330. and Patrick Mahomes to throw an interception at -120. That'll do it here in the Action Network podcast for our Super Bowl 57 Best Bets episode presented by FanDuel. If you missed the full betting preview with Raybon and Stuckey or the Propapalooza episode with Raybon and Sean Kerner, both are out now. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app to see all of the picks, and you can also track your own. A huge thank you to the three of these guys, Jill Gallant, Brandon Anderson, Luke Swain. Excellent job all season long. Thank you to you, the listener, for joining us all year. We hope we were helpful. We hope we were constructive and made you a better NFL better throughout the course of the season. That's the goal here, getting better each week, and we hope you had some fun along the way as well. We will return on Monday for one final Super Bowl recap episode for the season. Until then, we wish you all the very best of luck on all of your bets this weekend for Super Bowl 57, and we'll see you all here next time on the Action Network podcast presented by FanDuel.